Okay, so we've got the recording started, and as we're going along, again, this is assignment number 3 that we are going to be covering. So there's a few different things as we go that you guys might have some questions on, and again, totally fine. I just want to make sure that you can have a chance to ask those and that I can answer some of those. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at the course assignment. So this is the same assignment that you guys can download, same PDF as always. And as we kind of go through it, there's a couple of things that I do want to point out to you. So first of all, the goal of this assignment really is to give you guys practice in understanding how to undertake a full data mining project, I guess. I know a lot of you have background in pulling data. Some of you have background in systems redesign, in different types of maybe black belt or green belt training, yellow belt training. So there are several people who have different types of different types of knowledge background. So what we're going to try to do with this is really try to get you guys to kind of understand how to do a full data mining project. So as I said in the background of the assignment, you're probably going to encounter the situation where somebody says they want to know something, but they're kind of vague about what exactly it is they want to know. Now, I don't know about all of you, but even before I really kind of got into data mining, I'd get these questions at work all the time. Somebody wants to know something, but they don't really know what they want to know. So they don't know what they don't know. And it can get to be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. So what we're going to do with this assignment is give you guys some practice in framing up a question. Okay, so what you're going to do with this question is you want to come up with your own research question that will help you or help the VA to optimize veteran care. So now thinking about that, some of you have probably been thinking over the last week, well, I'm not in direct patient care, so how do I optimize veteran care? Now think about your role and your department's role within the VA, right? No matter where you are, whether you work on, the front lines in an outpatient clinic, whether you're behind the scenes in facilities or maybe in HR, every department has something that they can do in order to optimize veteran care. So the idea here is that you want to try to kind of create this question around something that you are interested in. So you get to choose the question. So think of this assignment as your one chance to look into something that you've never been able to look at before. Okay, so I know that's kind of a big idea for some people. And so one of the reasons, or one of the things I tried to kind of help you narrow it down a little bit. So if you go on to page 2 and you look at your details section, I suggest that you use the question that you came up with in Module 2 discussion board as a starting point. Now, you don't have to use that question. I've had a lot of people, a few people over the weekend ask, do you have to use that question? And I also put it in my weekly email last Wednesday. You do not have to use the question that you came up with your Module 2 discussion board, but I found over the years, if I just say pick a question, I get almost everybody in the class saying, well, is this question okay? Is this question okay? What about this question? I don't know where to start. So use that question as a starting point if you've never kind of thought of this before. But at the same time, think of this as your chance to really take a look at things from your vantage point. And it may be something that you are interested as a part of your job. It might be something that you've just always wondered about. It may or may not be part of your job. The one thing I will say is you don't want to use a project that's already been done. You also don't want to use a project that you need to have done in the next month or so, because we are going to be coming back to this assignment and this data mining project. And we're going to come back to it in course 4. So you'll need to have something that you don't probably need to have finished until maybe next February, assuming that all of you are going to continue on and take course 4 yet this fall. Okay. So kind of knowing that when you're looking at your question, you want to come up with something that is going to have enough detail that you can start determining what types of data might be useful to you. you want to try to find some available data sources. So again, remember, data mining, you really want to think of yourself as a data detective. And when you put your data detective hat on, you can use any data source that you can find. So it might be something from the VSSC or the ARC. It might be a query, a SQL query directly from the CDW or an RDW, Regional Data Warehouse, Corporate Data Warehouse. It might be a local report that has been put together that you guys have been using for pulling certain types of data. It might be another person. Okay, so you might be going to talk to somebody and looking at data using that individual as a data source. So that being said, having your data source, you can choose any of those as long as you document what you did and where you got the data from. Basically, the way that I look at it from the reader's standpoint whenever we do these assignments is if you don't identify who or where the data came from, then if you don't identify where your data came from, I pretty much assume that you've made it up. You need to identify that data. You need to identify where that data came from. Okay? So identify the data. If you don't identify your data source, you will get points taken off because this is a course about data mining. And if you can't tell me where the data came from, then I assume you just invented it. And that is something that you want to just get in the habit of documenting data. You want to document your data source on any data page that you have in your case study file. You want to document a data source anytime you have a graph or a chart, a table in a report, in a memo. Just put a little tag on it that has that data source. You want to always do that because in this day and age of electronic documents, it's very, very easy for somebody to cut and paste a section out of something without the entire document. And now where's that data source? How do I know where that data came from, that it's a valid data source? Right? It also will help you in the long run because if you're coming back to this project, which we will in course 4, if you know where your data came from, if you need to replicate it or maybe you need to update it, you're not wasting time trying to build that query again in Pyramid or in SQL. Okay, so you want to really be really particular about making sure that you've got those data sources documented on your documents. And I will point it out. If you don't have a data source, I will ask you, where is your data source? So you'll start seeing that for those of you who've gotten your assignment 2 back already, you'll start seeing that question. But going forward, if you haven't documented your data source, you're going to lose points because I don't know where your data came from. Okay. One other thing I would recommend is in your case study file, keep track somewhere what cubes were helpful for you for this project and which were not, because all of us have, I know you've all done this before, whether it's in a data project or you're looking something up for yourself from at home, things like that. You look at a source for something and you say, or a web page, anything like that, and you say, I think I've seen this before, and I think I realized that this was not helpful. So now I've just spent another 5 minutes looking at something that I already knew was not helpful, but I forgot that I've already looked at it. So what you want to do with that is that's one of the reasons why you want to keep track of what data sources were helpful and which were not. As you do more and more data mining, you'll find yourself knowing which cubes contain which data. The other thing is make sure you're reading those data definitions. They are super, super helpful when you are looking at whether or not a cube is going to be useful for your particular data, your data set. So you want to make sure you read those data definitions because it will also tell you how frequently the data is refreshed. So also another suggestion I make is tracking your parameters or your settings. So what is your I'm trying to think of sorry, my brain is going faster than I can talk. So you want to track your parameters or settings. So thinking about Pyramid, you want to document what was your filter, what filters did you use? What did you use to do the slicing and dicing? What was rows? What was columns? Those types of things. Again, doing the work up front when you figure it out makes it so much easier going forward when you come back to something. And again, in the beginning, you're probably thinking, this is a lot of work for this file, and this doesn't seem like it makes any sense. But once you get kind of in the groove, get used to using this format, this case study document, of having everything in one place, it will make things so much easier going forward. And it's much, much easier to talk about things. If somebody wants to know, see raw data from a reference standpoint, you're in a meeting, you can pull it up right there. You've got all of that right to hand. So it's a little bit more work when you're getting used to using this type of format, but being able to put together this case study file is going to make your life easier going forward.
So that being said, let's see, what else do I have on here? So those were a couple of questions I had over the weekend. So again, as you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. So as kind of part of this assignment, you're going to submit a case study briefing. Okay, so what does that exactly mean? What is a briefing, right? A briefing is going to be kind of a report. It's going to be a document that covers all of these different items. So go ahead, make sure you read through your details around different things. I give you some jumping off questions in part 2, but you want to identify what is the research question that you created and why did you choose it? Why was this particular question interesting to you? Why should we take a look at this? Okay. You need to identify any names and locations of any data sources. Most of you will be using data cubes. Some of you will be using reports. If you want to use SQL to do a direct pull from the CDW, go right ahead. That's totally fine. Again, any source is a valid source as long as we can document it and we could redo a data retrieval again using that same source. You want to come up with a preliminary summary of any patterns that you've found in the data. What have you noticed thus far? So your study might be something where you're looking at a brand new situation. Maybe you are going to try to make some changes as a part of your overall research, and you want to have you want to use this data mining project as a baseline to get baseline data. Go right ahead. Okay. You want to have address any challenges that you might run into in terms of answering your original question. So maybe you don't collect the data yet. That might be a challenge. Maybe the data is out of date. Maybe you don't have the access to get down to the level that you want or need in order to answer the original question. So think of what challenges might there be in answering your question, and also identify any additional questions that you've come up with as a result of the analysis. So what you're going to do is what is required, and actually what I'm going to do, let's see if I can get a little whiteboard here. Doo, doo, doo. Hang on. Oh, that's right. This is not going to let me do the whiteboard the way I want it. So let's do this. One quick second. I'm going to open a Word document because I see you guys kind of, there's a couple questions that are coming up. So I will go, just give me 1 second until I get this file open. Doo, doo, doo. I don't have any nice hold music. I'm sorry. And you guys don't want to hear me sing about it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so everybody should see a blank page right now, hopefully. We'll give you guys some giant text so everybody can see. Okay, so a couple of things. So here, good questions. You guys have some good questions. Okay, so first of all, what kind of document are we looking at, right? When we're looking at a briefing or a case study, or what exactly are you looking at? Okay, so let me, hang on. Please hold one more time. Instead of watching me make everybody dizzy, I'm just going to give you guys this for just a moment. So please hold while I get my other document open, and then nobody's head's going to spin while I'm trying to open up stuff that's flipping around every direction. So 1 moment, please. Okay, not that document. This is why I wanted to make sure I have everything. Okay, so we are going to do okie dokie doke. Okay, now that everybody's had a wonderful time looking at that PowerPoint, here we go again. Let's try this again. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at in terms of making sure what exactly are you turning in. Okay, so there's a couple of different things. There's the case study whoopsies. So a case study file is going to be all of your data. So the case study file is like what we had last week, the examples in the homework helps, right? So for homework 2. Okay, actually we'll just do this. This will make it easier to you guys for you guys to see. Um, Now you also will have, generally speaking, I like to put the executive summary in the case study file as a separate tab. That's just so you can keep everything together. You don't have to, you can have it as a separate memo. I personally, this is my preference. Just because otherwise I tend to lose the file, the executive summary file, and then you always have one there. So in a case study file, you're going to have the examples, you're going to have all your data, you're going to have your analysis, you're going to have all those case study components. So you can kind of see the examples in the homework help section, okay, for the case study. Now, a briefing, so we'll do this. Oops, come on. I don't want another one. There we go. Let's make this bigger. So this is going to be kind of what we're looking at here. Okay, so this is going to be what I'm kind of thinking, what you're looking at in terms of length. So an executive summary is generally 1 page. 2 pages if you have like a header on it. Do you know what I mean by header? So like that's your, kind of to and from bit. But you want one page of text, 2 pages if it includes the header. A memo is usually 3 to 8 pages and generally includes some graphics. A briefing is usually 4 to 10 pages, and generally you're going to include some graphics. Generally you want to include some graphics. So when I say that, that means charts, tables, uh, graphs, all those fun things. And a report is something that is very detailed, and it's generally longer than a memo. Sometimes it's longer than a briefing. It kind of like a report is pretty much anything longer than a menu, but a briefing is usually for around 4 to 10 pages. So what you would need to turn in, that's going to be somebody's next question, right? So what do I need to submit? I can see all of you are thinking that right now. So what do you need to submit? You actually only need to submit, so required is the briefing document. Okay, optional is the case study file. Does that help you guys out? So to answer your questions, especially yours, let's see who I'll ask. I think different people. Okay, so that's kind of what it is. So briefing, being briefing PowerPoint slides. Generally speaking, I would say this is more of a Word document, but you want to kind of you could also set it up so that you would be able to translate it into PowerPoint. You don't necessarily have to. But think of like a briefing being you're going to hand it off. If you were going to do PowerPoint briefing, then you would need to have all of the lecture, all of the slide notes very, very, very detailed. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Anita, or did I make that more confusing? And I don't know, I think, Bo, I got your questions. I think I've got Bo's, Mary's, and Elizabeth's questions answered. If that's not the case, somebody let me know and I can try to walk through it again. Okay. So what's required is that briefing document, and what is optional is the case study file. Now, that being said, one of the things that I've had a lot of students do in the past is to submit both documents, the briefing document and the case study document. So yeah, what you want to do is you want to start out building your case study file. So if you look at, let's see, I can't split my screen to show 2 different things. Okay, so we'll go this way. Hang on, everybody. Okay, so if you go back over here and we're looking at the details for the assignment, part 1 here, okay, is going to create your case study. So first, create the case study. Okay, so first do the case study. Don't try to write the briefing first. It won't work. You will not, it will not have the right flow. So first, create your case study file. Then once you've gotten your case study file, once you've kind of taken a look at your patterns, again, if you put those comments on your data tabs as to answering these different questions, do you need additional data? What's complete, incomplete? Are there different patterns that you see that's showing up? Once you get all of that done, creating any of these documents here, so creating any of these documents, you'll be able to do that just in a snap because you've got all that data in your case, all of the information is in your case study file. So do the case study file first. Then once you've got that done, you should be able to do any of these, whether in Word or in a PowerPoint format, with minimal effort if you've done a good job on your case study file. And that's one of the reasons why homework number 2 was the case study file itself, so that you'll get some feedback on that before you have to finalize and build your write your briefing for this one. So what I would recommend doing is start out building that case study file. Do that first. Okay. Once you do that, then you've got your case study file, you've got everything in one location, then regardless of what is asked for. So right now, in this instance, I'm asking for a briefing. Okay. One of the things that I've found with this particular assignment is once you start kind of once you've chosen your question, for many students, they will actually start putting this project into practice as a part of course 4. If that's the case, you're probably going to have somebody ask you for a memo. Somebody else might ask you for a report. Somebody else might just want you to do a quick summary of what this project is. Any of these, once you've got that case study file done, you can pull this together in a snap. Because think about, once you've got your executive summary, you've got the data, you can pull out the key points. You've got your analysis. If you've got that page where you've got all of the detailed analysis with all of those case study components, now we can expand on that, bringing in some more information for the memo or the briefing. Somebody might want to know everything under the sun about it, in which case you're probably going to end up with a report. Okay, if you did do PowerPoint slides in terms of a briefing, then you do want to have that detailed verbiage, Anita, kind of like you're saying. So similar to what I provide you guys for the lecture notes is what you would want to do for the PowerPoint. Because one of the things to keep in mind, and I'm hoping that you guys got this in the first 2 courses as well, is it is so easy for somebody to pass on a document that they find interesting. So you've got this project, you email it off to your supervisor, or you're in a meeting and somebody says, hey, I'd really like to see some more information on that. So you send off this memo or you send off a PowerPoint, right, in email. Well, now they think it's interesting, so they're going to send it on to somebody else. But maybe now you've gone on annual leave, so you're not available to answer any questions. If you've got things documented, if you've got those data sources attached to all of your data, if you've got detailed verbiage, if you're doing a PowerPoint, if you've got your um, your PowerPoint notes done well, now there's not going to be as many opportunities for somebody to misunderstand what your intention was in terms of presenting certain data. And we've all sat through a discussion about where somebody is now having to defend where their data came from and what it showed because somebody misconstrued something earlier on, right? I'm sure that all of you have been or seen that situation. Okay. Um, So there's actually I think this was before any of you were in, but we actually had this situation with one of the books that we were originally using for course 1, where the title of it and the contents of the book were 2 different things. And if you only looked at the title and didn't read the contents, there's a lot of like it just people got really confused as to why we were using a certain book. And so because once we explained it, then it made more sense. But had we done a little bit better job of documentation, this is back when we got the program started, that confusion might not have been there. So that's where having that case study file, having that documentation, whether it's your data source, um, whether it's the detailed verbiage around explaining graphs and charts in a PowerPoint, that type of thing, you want to make it as difficult as possible for somebody to misunderstand what you found. Because a lot of times when you're doing these types of projects, you may find something that is completely out of the blue. You might find something that some people don't like because it's not the way it's been previously. I don't know if any of you have been in that situation before. Um, but you want to make sure that you've got that documentation there, because then it's much, much easier to go back and say, well, I did pull this information and here's where it came from. So does that does that kind of help you guys understand a little bit more about how this document should be set up and why you want to do that case study file first? Does that help? So that's why I say the required one is the briefing document. Optional, you can always put the case study file in there. And one thing I've had people do too is if you put the case study file in there, if there's something I don't understand in your required document, then I can always look it up in the case study file and say, okay, well, where did this come from? Okay, where did this, did I miss the document source somewhere? Did I misunderstand why that they think this particular data pattern is important? That type of thing. So the briefing document is the required document. The optional is attaching the case study file. So you're only required to attach one thing in your submission, but you do have the option to attach both. Totally up to you. If you do only attach one and I do have a question, then usually what I do is I'll send you an email and say, I don't understand this. So can you get back to me before I do a final grade on it? And everything, as always, submit in PDF, please, because as you guys have been seeing probably with homework 1, and some of you have gotten I've gotten homework 2 uploaded for you guys as well. I try to write the comments right on your documents. So PDF is the easiest way to do that. Um, so I require it in PDF, please, because that way it's just going to be that much easier. Also, please use the right name on it. I've already had a couple of people where I can't figure out the who the file belongs to. So name your files correctly, please. Okay. And you need to name it on the file, not on the label. Does that make sense? So not the label when it's submitted. Does that make sense to you guys? Because when you upload it, I'm assuming when you guys upload a file, it's similar to what I have, where I have this box and it's, choose the file to upload. You choose the file to upload, and then it says label. If you don't name the file correctly on your own hard drive before you upload it, what I end up getting is if you don't, yeah, you can do both the same. That's fine. But if you don't, what happens is I get this is, okay, so I get the label. What it tells me is, and I'll just use mine. So homework3.pdf, the label equals that, but the file, when it's downloaded, reads this. Now I have no idea whose homework 2 that is, or homework, there we go, homework. So I don't know I don't know whose that is. I don't know whose homework 2 that is. Because when I download it, it batch downloads the entire class, all of the files for the entire class at once. So all 60 some of you at once. So if I get 5 files that say homework2.pdf, trying to make sure that I upload the right feedback file takes a lot of time on my end, because I have to open every single feedback file to figure out who does it belong to, and then make sure that I know what order it's in the folder that I have it in order to upload it, so that I can upload the right one to the right person. So if you label it correctly, but you don't label it, if you label it in the submission, but the file, you don't name it in the file the file name correctly, then it is going to take me longer to get your feedback back to you, because I don't know who it belongs to. So basically what I do is I upload everybody's files that I can tell who they belong to, and then go back and weed through these until I get everybody sorted out. So please, please, please name your file. Here, we'll even underline it. Name the file. Okay, and as Elizabeth suggested, you can do both, name both the same thing, totally fine. But please, please name the file. Otherwise, the file I get is homework2.pdf, which is not any sort of helpful to me. Does that make sense? We're about halfway done. Do you guys have any questions on anything having to do with the, like, I guess with, with any of the lecture materials at all? Or are you guys still, is that still going okay? Anything along those lines? And some of you should have, most of you actually should have your assignment document back from homework 2, your feedback one. If you don't, you should be getting that back over the next few days. So I'm trying to get those out as best as possible. Do you guys have any other questions? Yeah, it's definitely, I will tell you guys, this course is definitely the hardest of all the classes, and I wish I could make it a little easier. The biggest challenge is trying to fit it in the 10-week time frame. Ideally, this would be like a standard 16-week semester, but with the VA kind of requested that we have it in this time frame. So it's been a little bit more of a challenge, I know, for some of you. And I agree that if you looking at SQL is a little bit challenging in terms of the examples, but I will say that this text was really the best one in terms of choosing choosing something that would actually give you guys good theory in terms of data mining. One of the hardest things about this particular course is this is the first, and as far as I can find, the only course that does data mining at this level in healthcare. So not setting up the programs, but actually doing mining of the healthcare record, mining of the data that's out there, those types of things. And so that it does make it a little complicated because I don't have a really nice textbook, which is why you get kind of a couple of different textbooks. But it's also one of the things I would say when you're reading through the text, try to look more at the theory sections, and you don't have to understand the SQL 100%. However, I've also heard back from students who have taken the course, completed the courses, and then gone back to do SQL courses, that it's been very, very helpful because now they've got examples right to hand of doing some of the data mining options. So do you guys have any, what other questions do you have? Most of the lectures this week, both lectures 5 and 6, are really around giving you guys ideas in terms of patterns, giving you guys ideas in terms of what kinds of things could you look for, that type of thing. And remember, you don't have to tie your question back directly to, you don't have to tie your question back directly to patient, like frontline patient care. Remember, optimizing veteran care has a lot of things. I had somebody do a project once on whether or not um, they should add valet services to the new parking structure that was going in. So again, not necessarily patient care, but very important because one of the things was is they were having issues with having enough parking while the parking structure was being built, as well as accommodating both the patients, the veterans, their caregivers, and all of the staff. So how did you manage that? Was it going to be a better idea to have a valet, or would it be better to have an offsite parking with a shuttle running? So there's things around that too. You don't necessarily have to use direct patient care. So keep that in mind as you're doing things. What kinds of questions, any other questions you guys have? Yeah, so looking around, glad to hear that that valet was successful. I know it's really successful in a lot of areas, and I will definitely say at our local, my local hospital, not a VA hospital, but our local one, I have taken advantage of the valet whenever it's there. It is just makes things so much easier. Um, so I've definitely like it. It was very interesting reading kind of the case that this particular student made for putting together valet and not necessarily doing along. I think they ended up recommending valet plus shuttle, but there some of their further questions were things around staff time, costs, all that kind of things. So looking at some of your ideas around looking, things like maximizing budgetary resources and comparing facilities. One thing you might want to look at there, again, we talked about here, actually, let me do a new page and we'll kind of, whoopsies. Where's your new page? Okay, that did not give me a new page. One moment, please. Okay, so let's do a new page without a bullet list. Okay, so some ideas of things that you might want to look at is looking at looking at doing a baseline. So you might be getting some baseline numbers or data. Okay, depending on what you're doing. So like Elizabeth, with your idea around looking at budgetary resources and how facilities compare, you could do a comparison. You could do look at that. So think about you might do comparison between VA facilities, right? Or you could also do something around kind of the community. I've had people look at that VA versus community. Okay, I've had, people look at, you know, things around, if you're looking at like fee care versus not, so non-fee. So looking at that, you could do looking at different things. So like to look at that question around impact of choice on epilepsy, I would look I actually would look in both. So you might want to look at the fee care and then sometimes it's listed as fee or non-fee. Sometimes it's listed as non-VA care. Sometimes it's listed as choice. So you might have to go to a couple different places, and that might be where you run into some of your challenges. Remember, one of the components that we're looking at, right? So if we go back here one more time, one of the things you want to have in your briefing is any challenges that you might foresee. So you might be able to get some of the data. So you might be able to get data on fee or the non-VA care data, but you might not exactly know how it's tied directly to choice yet. So that might be a challenge, or that might be an additional question. I will tell you, I have not yet had a student that has not come up with an additional question. Once in a while, I have somebody who doesn't have any challenges. But if you don't have any challenges, identify at least say that you haven't found any challenges, okay? Because somebody is always going to ask that. Well, isn't do you have any challenges? It's more that is the kind of the anomaly in this particular assignment. Most people have challenges. Most people, I've never had a student that did not have an additional question. But when you're looking at your challenges, um, if you decide that you really don't have any challenges at this point, or you can't see any challenges, then at least identify that you've taken a look and it looks like you're able to get all of the data and or information that you need in order to answer your question. Okay. Or maybe instead of a challenge, you need to do an experiment. So maybe we're going to do a time and motion study, or maybe we need to do small tests of change, something along those lines in order to get the final data. So that's not necessarily an additional question because you know what you're going to do, but that would kind of fall into this challenges section. Does that make sense? But like I said, most students have at least one challenge. I've not ever had any student that has not had any additional question. And I will tell you guys that this is my favorite assignment of this course to look at, because this is everybody's got such interesting backgrounds. Everybody's got interesting things to work on. There's always new things that I never knew about the VA or about healthcare that come out in this particular assignment. So it's very, very interesting to me. And it's also one of the reasons why, I want you to pick something that you guys are interested in, that you've always wondered about. So it does not necessarily have to be something that is a job task. You can choose to have it be a job task. You can choose it to be something that's in a completely different department that you just want to know about. Okay, this is your chance. We've got the data access set up so that you can look at all of these different things. Okay, so this is kind of it's a challenge coming up with a question. But again, once you kind of come up with it, as you go through creating that case study file, you will see how you can kind of better define things. And then going through this what to submit list, again, identify your question and why are you researching it? Why do you think it's interesting? Why should we pay attention to it? Verify your data, identify what your data is, what your data source, again, can be a cube, a report, direct SQL poll. It can be a person or people. Um, any of those things are valid. You want to come up with that preliminary summary. And this is all going to be important when we get, again, down the road and come back to this assignment. So the preliminary summary of any patterns, this section here, this preliminary summary section, is probably going to be your largest section in this assignment. So you want to be in depth when you're talking about your preliminary summary. Now you might find patterns later on, going down the road as you work on this project some more. That's totally fine. But look at identifying what have we talked about, some of the patterns that we've talked about thus far. So is there any of those epidemiological measures that you might be able to apply? Are there anything around that, time, place, person that you can look at? So looking at going back to your three causes, okay, those types of things. So you want to kind of take a look at that. And really this preliminary summary section should be kind of your biggest section out of this assignment. You want to really explain to me or kind of answer that question that so what? Why should I be looking at this? Give me the answer to so what? Why should I care about this? Why do you think this is interesting? So you give the why you chose it here, and now this preliminary summary is going to help back up your question. Once in a great, great while, I've had somebody whose preliminary summary, once they did the data mining, actually refuted the question. Okay, if that is the case, if you're finding that with yours, if you came up with a question and the data that you're finding is actually kind of saying, no, this isn't worth investigating, please let me know. Just go ahead and send me an email and we will figure out what to do with your situation. I've only had that, I think, let me try to think here, maybe once or twice in the last 6 years. But I do want to let you know that that has happened once in a while. So if that is your situation, go ahead and send me an email and let me know kind of where that's coming up and we can figure out how to handle that. Okay, I haven't had it come up frequently, but once in a while it has come up that somebody's data is saying, no, we don't need to study this anymore. So if you are that person, just let me know. It will figure out a way to kind of get that figured out for you. So what other questions do you guys have? Anything else? Um, Hopefully I've answered questions around, what should be in that case study file. Also, your feedback file from homework 2 should help you with that. And then this is kind of lengths for the different items. And like I said, what to submit. You have to do that briefing document. And it's optional to submit the case study file, but it does need to be in PDF format. So what other questions? We've got about a little over 10 minutes left. I think that's all the questions I had in my email. So I don't know what else you guys might have. I'm going to just check really quickly and see if there is anything additional in the email. So one quick second while I look at that. So give me one quick second to see if anything has come up that I didn't answer. I think that is it for my questions. So what else do you guys have? If you guys don't have any other questions, we can end a little bit early and you guys might get an extra 10 minutes to kind of take a look at anything else. So in terms of getting the remainder of for those of you who haven't had your homework 2 graded, I am hoping to have everything done at the latest by Thursday. So I'm trying to make sure that I can get that out so everybody's got their feedback document to have over the weekend so you can take a look at that as well as have time to ask any questions about things on that. So that is what we're looking at. Yeah, and thanks, Mary. The dog's doing okay. It's unfortunately the second he blew his ACL, so we had to fix it up somehow, but now it's just resting. He's just resting, which is nice. Um, so thanks for that. And then when you're looking at the choice program, for anybody who's looking at choice, Beth has a really good comment here that you might have some challenges because some of the vendors, one in particular, has not gotten the data back to the VA in a timely fashion. So that meant, again, that's one of the reasons why I've got that bullet in there around challenges and the one bullet around additional questions, because that is something that, the data's there somewhere. We just don't have it right now. So now what do? You're kind of in a holding pattern until you get that. And especially looking at some of the vendors when you're looking at national level vendors, that kind of makes it a little more difficult, right? Because it's not just you guys that are waiting for your local data, it's everybody's waiting for the data. So if that is the situation, go ahead and acknowledge that as a challenge, acknowledge that as an additional question. It's always better to acknowledge those types of things right up front than have somebody come back and say, well, why don't you have, this doesn't look right. It doesn't look like you have all the data here. And you say, well, yeah, no, I don't have all the data because we're missing some from one of the vendors. So um, that would be something that you might have to, as long as you acknowledge that up front and do that, identify what those challenges are, what those additional questions are, you're going to have a better answer to that when somebody does say, well, we don't have all the data yet. And you can say, yes, I know we don't have all the data yet, but at least we're starting, here's the start. Here's what I see kind of at the beginning, at least. So any other questions or comments from anybody? Hopefully, as much as you can with data mining, this is kind of a fun project to work on because it's something that, you're choosing and it's something that, you hopefully have always kind of wondered about. And this is that chance to actually to answer those questions or to dive in and see what you can find. One thing I will kind of say is be a little bit careful as you're doing your data mining because it's very easy with these types of questions to start going down rabbit holes. And it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland. You just keep seeing something else. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at this. Oh, I never knew we could get this data. I wonder what else we can get. And so, if you find yourself in that situation where you're kind of, oh, look at that shiny thing, with your data mining, what I do is kind of create a holding file. So some of you, I'm sure, have used like parking lots and meetings, right? The post-it note parking lot technique in a meeting. Kind of do the same thing with your data mining. If you start realizing that you're doing a lot of, oh, look at that. I wonder if I could get this. I wonder, hey, that would be really useful here, but it isn't for this particular project. Make yourself a little post-it parking lot, whether it's just in a Word document or in an Excel file, and say, hey, I found this data for this project over here. Document that and then go on. That will help you kind of pull yourself back and out of the rabbit hole a little bit and give yourself a little bit kind of cut down on um, the data mining time. But it is very, very easy with this particular assignment to kind of fall into that where, oh, hey, look at that over here. I never knew we could get this data. So, that's one suggestion that I have. I know that, even as you go forward with data mining, you're still going to find yourself in that situation. I know that I do when I'm doing big data mining projects. It's, oh, I never knew I could get that data. That would have been really helpful back here. Wonder if I could keep, play with that. So if you find yourself doing that, just make yourself a little parking lot, track what cube you were in, what you wanted to use that particular data for, and then that way it's out of your head, but you haven't lost it or you haven't forgotten where that was. So you can come back to it at another time when you have more time to take a look at it. So, what other questions? We've got about 5 minutes left. And if nobody has any additional questions or any additional comments, and I haven't gotten anything else in email while we've been online. Um, Anything else? Okay, if there's not anything else that people have questions on, again, this let me start over. This office hours has been recorded, and I am hoping that we should get it up a little more timely than we did last office hours. I don't exactly know what happened. I think there was some miscommunication in terms of getting things posted. So with that, I'm hoping that this one will be up posted later this afternoon. And if you have any questions in the meantime, go ahead, send me an email, and we can go from there. So thanks everybody. You had some great comments, great questions today, and I am very excited to read these assignments. So thanks a lot, and I hope everybody has a great day. Enjoy.